It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. Consider hitting the like and subscribe button because I upload a video every single day. It's always college football related, sports related. We have a good time. Today, I want to talk about what we are actually looking at. Oh, no. That was weird. So I want to talk about what we are actually looking at when we talk about the 2021 composite. I want to talk about what we're looking at when we look at the uncommitted prospects with Smile Munden deciding to commit to Georgia earlier today. And I want to get into a little bit of Bedlam conversation. But let's start with this. If you're in the chat, say what's up, like the video, subscribe to the channel. We talk about college football in sports without the question mark. Here, I'm really getting interested in what's going on in the sports media landscape. Not that anybody else outside of me seems to care, but my goodness, man. Let's start with this news that I thought should go toward the top after reading it myself. I was taking a look at Steve Wiltfong's leans story. I always love a good leans story as to where the recruits are going. And I'm going down the list, right? It's going about how you thought, right? The number one player in the 247 Sports composite, or excuse me, not in the composite, in the top 247, JT Tuimoloau, coming out of Sammamish, Eastside Catholic, feels like an Ohio State lean. Cool. Corey Foreman, coming out of Centennial in Corona, California, feels like an LSU lean. Cool. Emeka Egbuka, feels like an Ohio State lean. Even as we can continue to talk about what that means in response to playing wide receiver at Oklahoma versus Ohio State or Washington. And then we get to Tristan Lay, who is ranked number 15 in the top 247. And yet the prediction from Wiltfong is Oklahoma. Check out this skinny. This is a tight one between LSU and Oklahoma, and I like where the Sooners stand at this point. A visit in the summer for the Sooner Summit was an eye-opener, and relationships with Oklahoma staff and their commits, along with Bill Blankenship's penchant for developing offensive linemen, all intriguing factors. LSU has pushed for Lay the longest. He's been to Baton Rouge the most of his finalists, including twice during the pandemic, and James Craig's track record is strong as well. Ohio State, Florida, and Clemson are the three others pushing hard, but I think it comes down to Oklahoma and LSU. Based on what I've heard right now, I like the Sooners' chances. That is really exciting news for Oklahoma fans and really interesting news on the LSU front because, you know, I talked about this earlier on Monday when we did the live show, live podcast Mondays and Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time, in which I thought LSU might have an opportunity to hold on to their commits and add to that commit list Mason Smith, Tristan Lay, Corey Foreman. Mason Smith is a huge LSU lean coming from the state and one of the top defensive tackles in the country. Corey Foreman took the trip there, saw his name on marquees outside of restaurants. I mean, that's what does it for you. It's not exactly, you know, your name inside a Tiger Stadium, but it's a pandemic. You can't get inside a Tiger Stadium without, you know, or with coaches to escort you around. They probably could, you know, make it easier for you to do, kind of like the Sooner Summit, where it just happened to be on that day that stuff just kind of was falling into place. And then there's this bit about Tristan Lay that I thought perhaps because he'd been down there, perhaps because his family is familiar with Baton Rouge now and they kind of like it, that he would be leaning that way. But in recent months, we have seen LSU see opt-outs of two of their top players, including Kerry Vincent and Jamar Chase, right? Reigning Biletnikoff Award winner. We've seen LSU be sorry on a football field. They are a 3-point dog to Arkansas this year. And we've also seen their defense can't stop anybody, right? Like their defense is holding up like a wet paper towel. It's just not very good. And the Bo Pelini experience might not last after this year. Matter of fact, Bo Pelini might be looking for a job the same way that Mike Nolan, I think, is going to be looking for a job at the end of this year. And then there's this latest with LSU's gross mishandling of sexual assault allegations in which we have criminal charges that are being filed, right? Darius Geis among them, Drake Davis in that story about him punching a woman in the stomach, and then a tennis coach knowing about it and not reporting it. That's untoward. And then we got on top of that the self-reported NCAA violations, wherein among other things, a booster paid money to an offensive lineman who ended up going to LSU. And we got LSU winning the national championship in New Orleans. Odell Beckham Jr. coming out there with a grip and ripping off the skins to hand to guys like Justin Jefferson, guys he thought, weren't no longer affiliated with LSU after having won a national championship. Yeah, all right. So I can understand how all of those things build toward perhaps you taking a look at somewhere else, notably Oklahoma. Oklahoma, because as was, noted there, Bill Bedenbaugh has an outstanding record when it comes to putting offensive linemen in the NFL draft. Though this year, his offensive line has not been anything like what we expected it to be. And Creed Humphrey's development has stunted, dare I say, regressed since his redshirt freshman year, in which Lincoln Riley went on record that September to say the most talented football player on our roster is not Kyler Murray. The most talented football player on our roster is Creed Humphrey. That was what was expected of him. And with Marquise Hayes, Tyrese Robinson, Creed Humphrey returning to make that interior that good, along with tackles like Adrian Ealy and even Eric Swinton to a degree, I expected them to compete for a Joe Moore Award this year, and they just haven't been that good of an offensive line. They've seen a true freshman start at left tackle in Anton Harris. You're seeing more Andrew Rame sightings at left guard. Andrew Rame is also one of the most talented football players of the 2020 class. I believe he finished in like the top 50 among the 247 Sports composite last year. And he's going to play center, guard. He can play some tackle for you if you want. I also expected to see more Bray Walker. I expected to see more Darrell Simpson. I have not seen a lot of either one of those guys through here. And you lose EJ Ndoma-Ogar to transfer to Missouri, right? And we're still waiting on a Finley Felix to show out, right? Figure out what's going on there. There's a number of offensive linemen that I would like to see Bill Bedenbaugh develop. That said, a couple years ago, he has a unanimous All-American, right? He has Orlando Brown. He has a Joe Moore Award-winning offensive line. He's able to put guys like Bobby Evans into the lead. You're seeing what Ben Powers is able to do. Drew Samia, who hadn't been great with the Minnesota Vikings, but he's still cutting a check. You know what I mean? So there's give and take, I think, on this discussion, but that Oklahoma is in this at all speaks to how severe the situation must be at LSU, because I would have written in pencil Tristan Lay decides to commit to LSU in December and sign his national letter of intent then. Now, with Wiltfong coming in with a prediction of Oklahoma, man that really does not miss very often. In fact, I think he's missed once in like the last 18 months, right? And that was at a time when everybody missed. Like everybody thought that this dude was doing somewhere else. Anyway, the point there being, if Oklahoma's in the discussion, Oklahoma must be leading. Now Oklahoma has an opportunity to capitalize on LSU's misfortune, go win a Big 12 championship, and they can start by doing it on national television this weekend. Now, I want to get into that. First, I want to take a question because I like to take the questions since we do the live show and you guys are in the chat. And then I'll get into discussion around Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, and Trajan Bridges and Tylan Wallace, which I think is really good because shout out Lincoln Riley for keeping it 100. Let me see. Looking for a member in the chat. Hey, RJ, have you heard the holdup with Gundy putting in anyone other than Sanders? So there's something to unpack there. Mike Gundy is a believer in guys that have paid into his program. He wants to see veterans and upperclassmen have the most opportunity to play football at Oklahoma State. He believes that that is how you build a culture at a place like Oklahoma State. If you know that you get to play right away, then perhaps you're not as bought in as kids that have played or been in your program for 3 years, 4 years. Now, if you're the best player, that's one thing. But even when we thought Spencer Sanders was the best player, he was not necessarily getting the looks, right? So much so that even Drew Brown, who grad transferred and redshirted from Hawaii, has to sit behind Spencer Sanders when all of us are like, yo, man, didn't this dude throw for like all the yards at Hawaii? What's he doing back there? Turns out Drew Brown wasn't really that good to begin with. But Spencer Sanders has been turning the ball over. I think that Shane Illingworth has an opportunity to be a better quarterback than Spencer Sanders, which is saying a lot because coming out of Denton, that was one of the most highly regarded quarterbacks in a Mr. Texas football coming out, right? We all wanted to see him, and we all thought that the Spencer Bowl that will be this weekend was going to be an all-timer, and yet he has not been able to stop putting the ball on the ground and throwing it to the other team. When we saw Shane Illingworth against Tulsa and a little bit in the following game, I was like, that's the dude, the true freshman quarterback. That's the guy. That's the best quarterback you got on the roster. Mike Gundy wants to play the guy that's paid into his program, the guy that he believes has bought into what they're doing in Stillwater. I believe in playing the best players, right? I recruited dudes to play better than the guys that I last recruited. That is the point, right? We want to get better and better and better. And if that means that I got to start Trevor Lawrence over Kelly Bryant, that's what I'm going to do. That's where I live. That's what I believe, right? But people were saying the same thing about Jalen Hurts and Spencer Rattler last year. It was, this kid Hurts won't throw the ball down the field. He holds the ball for too long, and he puts the ball on the ground. Why don't we see the true freshman? To which we're kind of getting to see why that is, right? Rattler's more of a gunslinger right now. He's still going to let it fly. But there are some situations in which you want to see him either get rid of the football or try to take off and go get what he can. Jalen Hurts was also a much more seasoned leader and a seasoned quarterback, having won a national championship and been an SEC Offensive Player of the Year, along with being the kind of dynamic threat that he was as a runner. Matter of fact, going into Bedlam last year, Jalen Hurts had Mike Gundy out there saying that Oklahoma was running the wishbone out of the spread, which is just the spread, Mike. Like, that's all that is. The spread is the wishbone. Like, that's what it is, just triple option. And yet he's like, they run triple option. Actually, no, they don't. It's just Jalen Hurts has the opportunity to run with the ball in situations where he could just as easily hand it off or throw it. And he just decides to throw it or run it or hand it off. It's not a triple option. And he got torched. Like, we had Kennedy Brooks rushing for 160 yards. We had Jalen Hurts throwing for like 163. In a game where Chuba Hubbard was not bad. I think it's like 24 rushes for 104 yards. So I think the holdup, to answer your question, is that Mike Gundy does not want to set a precedent by playing the true freshman ahead of the redshirt sophomore that he thinks is paid into his program. So what I wanted to discuss as in regard to Bedlam is something that Lincoln Riley had to say, and what I wrote about on OUinsider.com, and I want to reference this quote because it was a good one in a candid interview but media availability that Riley gave, which is to say that Trajan Bridges' game, sophomore wide receiver at Oklahoma, nobody's seen play, is not unlike that of Tylan Wallace, who last year I thought was the best wide receiver in the country before he blew out his ACL. He led Oklahoma State in receiving in every one of those games. It was having the kind of season that Chuba Hubbard was having, right? He was the lead dog of that three-headed monster before Chuba had his breakout season. So the quote that he gave was, as far as skill set, the guy that we most like, or that's most like him for us, he and Trajan Bridges, their games are very, very, very similar, remarkably similar in my opinion. But yeah, our guys get to go up against good receivers, but Tylan's tremendous, and he just does some things very, very well that are difficult to defend. Now, he answered that question in response to, with the kind of talent that you have at wide receiver, who do you trust to give you a good look of who Tylan Wallace might be when you play against him on Saturday? And then he popped up with Trajan Bridges, right? Nobody actually fed that to him and was asking, is Trajan Bridges like Tylan Wallace? And asked him to answer that question, though I think that would have been a decent enough question. Lincoln Riley just popped up with that. And that also, one, reminds us how good Trajan Bridges could be, right? Because last year, that dude played on all three teams, right? Special teams, offense, and he played some safety. Didn't look that great playing safety, but he played some safety, and they trusted him to do it, right? That's what you had in Trajan Bridges. It also adds to what I think the core of that pass-catching unit actually could be, which is an all-timer, right? Trajan Bridges might be the third best wide receiver of those four that they brought in 2019 of that sophomore core that basically leads the receiving unit that includes Jaden Hazelwood, Theo Weiss, Austin Stogner, and of course, Bridges. And you can make a great argument that Stogner or Weiss or even Hazelwood might be better wide receivers than Trajan Bridges, but also to that, it's another piece, another chess piece on the board that Riley has not been allowed to play with. And there is a contingent of Oklahoma fan that believes if Riley had been allowed to play Ronnie Perkins, Ramondre Stevenson, and Trajan Bridges to start the season, Oklahoma would be undefeated. And they'll even go as far as to say Ramondre Stevenson and Ronnie Perkins alone make Oklahoma an undefeated football team through this period with the way that they played the last couple of games since Ronnie Perkins and Ramondre Stevenson have been back. Because while a lot of people are going to pay attention to the back-to-back 62 points that they put up against Texas Tech and Kansas, what I paid attention to is how sure the defensive line has become, along with the secondary, because Oklahoma's real lapses on defense and the way in which they got beat by Iowa State and Kansas State is their secondary blew some coverages and got hit big. Like Deuce Vaughn is still running, right, for Kansas State through the middle of that defense. And you can throw any one of those three tight ends that Iowa State had against Pat Fields, and he was keeping it 100. They're so big. It's difficult, right? You need to be able to either get home quicker with your pass rush or shore up your coverages. And I think some of that is obviously shoring up your coverages. Having Trey Norwood play some strong safety and some nickel helps you tremendously if you're Oklahoma. You also get a Justin Harrington back who played a few snaps there against Texas Tech for sure. But also, on the other side, when you haven't had Jaden Hazelwood for most of the season, right, he just gets back. That's probably your most talented wide receiver, and I'm including Marvin Mims in that calculation, right? You also are just getting dudes that are comfortable with playing in the offense, like Obi Obialo, right? You're using your H-backs, your tight ends, in a myriad of ways. Along with Stogner, you're getting Mikey Henderson in there, Jeremiah Hall when you can have him, Braden Willis when he had been available to start, right? You're breaking in new tailbacks. Seth McGowan is a true freshman. Marcus Major is not used to that kind of workload, and TJ Pledger's finally coming into his own. It's before you get Ramondre Stevenson back, who was already your best tailback on paper. And then you're starting to gel as an offensive line, and your quarterback's getting a little bit more comfortable. I think adding Trajan Bridges to that mix definitely makes Oklahoma a favorite to win the Big 12 championship going into this week, because all they do is win out, they win the Big 12 championship, right? They just got to win Oklahoma State, West Virginia, Baylor, and then you play in a Big 12 championship game, and you're looking at a New Year's Six bowl, probably the Cotton Bowl, maybe against Texas A&M, depending on what happens, Florida, Alabama, and an SEC championship game. But Riley just going out of his way to say Trajan Bridges and Tylan Wallace's games are a lot alike also speaks to, I think, the wide receiver talent in Texas, right? And I know that Texas fans going to roll their eyes about this because they know what kind of talent they got in the state of Texas. But Tylan Wallace was there for you, and he was ranked, I think, just behind Sam Ehlinger in the 247 Sports Composite, like, overall rankings in the state of Texas at the time. CeeDee Lamb also comes out of Texas. Marvin Mims, Lone Star Frisco, comes out of Texas. Charleston Rambo comes out of Texas. Like, we can keep going, right? Theo Weiss coming out of Allen, right? Where Kyler Murray, EJ Ndoma-Ogar, and Lee Morris and others have come out of to play a little football at Oklahoma. Bobby Evans being another one of those. I mean, Tay Evans. Like, you keep going, right? They know what kind of talent they got there. But that Dennis Simmons has been able to develop that talent. That's the other reason I think the Trajan Bridges comp is important. Casey Dunn was the wide receiver coach that identified Tylan Wallace and developed Tylan Wallace into what I thought was going to be a Biletnikoff Award finalist at the very least had he stayed healthy last year. Matter of fact, I think like 10 games into the season, he was still one of the top 5 pass catchers in receiving yards over the course of the season, having only played 8 games. Add to that what Dennis Simmons has been able to do with all sorts of wide receivers, whether it be Dede Westbrook coming from junior college, or Sterling Shepard, who was born and bred and raised to be a Sooner, right? Son of the late Derek Shepard, or CeeDee Lamb, who came with all sorts of talent and then blossomed into that guy after Hollywood Brown was taken, another JUCO dude that Dennis Simmons turned into a first-round draft pick. Given some time, I think that you could be looking at a really, really great group of receivers and probably the most talented group of receivers in college football if Trajan Bridges is healthy and ready to play and released to play. Now, in as far as his suspension, I don't know what the holdup is. I mean, and Riley's been more than a little perturbed about the questions about the holdup for any of those kids' suspensions. Like, it's one of the questions that he just loathed answering, so much so that even like going into the game against Texas Tech, he's like, I got nothing to say. I don't know. I'll let you guys when I know. They find out that they can get those guys eligible to play the Friday before the Saturday, and they go play and they have themselves games. But I this whole season has been just toss it out. Like, the number of people that are actually watching college football, like watching sports in general, but watching college football is way down. This has been a really terrible November in as far as a month in which most people are really tuning in to college football. We lost Texas and Kansas earlier today to postpone rescheduling for December 12th, right? Oklahoma has been lucky in that it hasn't had any of its games rescheduled or canceled due to COVID-19, either on their own part or on the part of their opponents. I'm hesitant to say that we're going to get through the rest of this week without Oklahoma State having to do something, because Stillwater ain't exactly been a bastion of COVID-19 restrictions and safety protocols, all right? Like, they were having COVID parties and they had sorority houses that had to be locked up to start the season. We'll have to wait and see. I hope it gets played, like I hope all these games get played. But I also hope that we get to see Trajan Bridges, because that comp to Tylan Wallace is only going to serve to whet your appetite a little bit more. All right, let's take a look at the chat here. Let's see. What we got? Looking for good questions. Why does A&M not get the respect they deserve? A 28-point loss to Alabama this year, or the Sumlin era? Respect they deserve. They lost, like you said, they lost by 28 to Alabama. Plus, I continue to say this, and people continue to just kind of gloss this point. Ampersand U does their own press, okay? They are high on their own supply. Like, Ampersand U will be in their bag, showing up like Goku, and get stomped out. Like, I don't trust Goku to go into no match and win. That's not what he does. He gets in his bag, he gets gassed up, and he gets torched, right? Don't come out here like Texas A&M is Vegeta. That's Alabama's thing, all right? They're the ones to be like, so my whole planet got blown up? Cool, thanks for the phone call. I'm going to go back to doing what I do. Like, that's why we don't give Ampersand U any respect. They're lucky I give them respect. I call them the second best team in the SEC on the strength of beating that Florida team, right? That Florida team is going to get to play in an SEC championship game. That Florida team that everybody's gassing Kyle Trask up for, right? Like, I gave him some respect, but it's Ampersand U alumni. Y'all don't know how to actually win. Y'all are so bad at winning. Y'all so bad at being decent that you make yourselves intolerable. Nobody else wants to be around you. You know? That's what it is. Oklahoma fans ain't over here just stomping their feet. Because when y'all were in the conference, y'all weren't winning anything. Please, stop acting like y'all were some sort of superpower. No. You got the one win in the Cotton Bowl with Johnny Manziel and Kevin Sumlin against Oklahoma. Ain't done jack since, right? That's why we don't actually care what anybody at Texas A&M has to say. Why are people still trying to get Will Muschamp a job? This dude said Muschamp to UNC. I'm not trying to get Will Muschamp any more jobs. That man's getting $24 million, $22 million in buyout money across Florida and South Carolina. He getting a $50 million buyout in a pandemic. Like, I don't know what's more disrespectful. Him getting that buyout when they're facing like a $30 million budget deficit, or James Harden turning down $50 million annually at a place that's bent backward to make him comfortable. Or Robinson Cano forfeiting $24 million because that dude was taking performance-enhancing drugs. I'm like, ain't a drug ever been invented that's going to get me to forfeit no $24 million. I will show up fat and out of shape and make you pay me before I take the gas to try to swing a ball or a bat at a ball. I'm not doing that. $24 million, fam? You must be crazy. I can't. See. Dudes being here talking about my team. Yeah, all right. Let's see. A lot of woo pig in the house. See, Wolves58 says Texas A&M fans think they weigh more of their program than the rest of the country does. It's true. It's kind of like Central Florida in that way. Both of y'all just get on everybody's damn nerves. I'm not talking about Caleb Williams and Spencer Rattler right now, dog. I said that on Monday. We just not doing it right now. Why is everybody trying to get Mac Brown fired? Like, they've been remarkable. They've been really good. All right, let's take a look at the top 24 rankings that just came out earlier today, in which JT Tuimoloau is at the top. He's an Ohio State lean. We know this, right? Even as Corey Foreman feels like an LSU lean, 58% of crystal balls still say USC. So, I mean, keep that in the back of your head, right? I thought one of the biggest movers that we probably should talk about, and I think it's been brought up in the chat, is Dallas Turner, moving up from 41 to number 14, right? Or 16 spots, to number 14. Committed to Alabama, I think last July, and then made that upload. It's there. Barrett Carter has an opportunity to finish as, I think, a 5-star, which would be a really cool move for him. Late charge, moving up 39 positions to number 17. Committed to Clemson, coming out of North Gwinnett. It's the same place that Jordan Hancock is coming out of. They're putting out some ballers. JaQuincy McKinstry, still the number 1 player at his position. Still the number 1 player in the state of Alabama. Of course, committed to Alabama. Couple others that I want to talk about. Terrion Arnold, the 6-foot, 180-pound safety, who is so neck-and-neck battle between Florida and Alabama right now for him. He moved up 38 spots. Like, there's been some real moving and shaking here, but when we look at the rankings themselves, they're about what you would expect, okay? Alabama still at number 1, 310.55 points, an average of 94.26, which is stupid. Ohio State with 20 commits still got over 300 points, an average of 94.18 for their scores. That's stupid. LSU is still there. Even with all the things that have been going on with LSU, they're still ranked number 3 in the 247 Sports Composite and have an opportunity to steal the recruiting championship. And Georgia is charging. Like, with 19 commits, 283.37, 92.94 as an average score. Georgia has won 2 out of the last 3 national recruiting championships. Clemson's still there at 6 with 17 commits. They'll charge. They actually have the highest average of any team ranking outside of Alabama and Ohio State. So all they got to do is continue to recruit like they normally have been recruiting. Oklahoma is charging hard. Like, with an average score of 92.89, right? They have a higher average score than number 3 LSU in the team composite rankings. Think about that for a second. 92.89, 15 commits. LSU, 92.53, and LSU is sitting at number 3, right? That's with just 15 commits in the boat. So if Lincoln Riley charges the way that he charged in the 2019 class with Jeremiah Cradell, a Ramondre Stevenson, Ty DeArmond to close out a Marcus Stripling, Oklahoma could be sitting pretty with a top 5 class, be their second top 5 class in 3 years, they finished 6th. But that Brew McCoy thing. All right, so 2019, Oklahoma finishes just outside the top 5. And let me make sure that I get the math right here, because this is important. So I want to make sure I get this right. Yes, Oklahoma finishes at number 6 with 24 commits and an average score of 91.2. They probably finish number 5 if Texas does not get to count that Brew McCoy commit that got them to 26 and a score of 287.69. They fall out of the top 5. Oklahoma moves up. LSU moves to 4. Ampersand U moves to 3. So, this could be Oklahoma's first top 5 class in 11 years. The last one being 2010, which the crazy thing about that one is there weren't any 5 stars in that 2020 recruiting class, according to the top 247 composite. I think Tony Jefferson was the top recruit in that class too, which is wild. So think about that for a second. Oklahoma finds 10 other dudes, like the 15 dudes they got. They finish as a top 3 class in recruiting, which is bonkers. And they get help, right? Because with the re-ranking, Danny Stutzman, linebacker, who was a 3-star, has moved up to a 4-star in the top 247. Jordan Moots, coming out of Choctaw, has been moved to a 4-star as well. 6'4", little over 200 pounds. He's going to play a little safety. Oklahoma still got Billy Bowman in the boat, right? Who is ranked number 33, I believe, in the 247 Sports Composite. Matter of fact, I want to make sure that I get that right as well. Let's just check on it right quick. At 33, right? And then number 3 in the state. Yeah. Number 38, I believe, in the top 247. And then, like, what's going to happen with Tuimoloau Adeleye, right? So I put in a crystal ball on this like last week. You can go check that out. But Tuimoloau was committed to Ohio State, reopens his recruitment. Feels like it's down to Alabama and Texas A&M. Maybe Oklahoma sneaks in there. I doubt it, but we'd see, right? But when you're looking at the uncommitted prospects, the guys that are still out there that I think are intriguing, that can really make a dent in these rankings, are guys like LJ Johnson, who Steve Wiltfong has predicted to Texas. He's ranked number 40 in the top 247, but it's going to be down to Texas A&M and, of course, Texas for him. I like Johnson, and I think what's interesting about the Johnson deal and him having Texas and ampersand U means that those are two places that Kamar Wheaton probably doesn't go, right? Especially when we're talking about Texas. When you look at Kamar Wheaton's last, I think it was top 3. It's been so long since we heard from Kamar Wheaton that it's really going to come down to, I think, LSU, SMU, or Oklahoma. And LSU has already taken one running back, and Oklahoma hasn't taken any. You get to add a guy like Kamar Wheaton to that class, and all of a sudden, you got a real shot at finishing not just inside the top 10, but again, toward that top 5, because he is going to be a much higher ranked player than most of the other guys you're recruiting. Matter of fact, 100% of crystal balls have him going to Oklahoma right now as a 5-star composite recruit, number 23 in the rankings, and just behind Kyle McCord, quarterback committed to Ohio State, and just ahead of JaQuincy McKinstry, the number 1 cornerback and a commit to Alabama and number 1 player in the state of Alabama. Also ahead of Smael Mondon and Will Shipley, right? Will Shipley is committed to Clemson. Like, there's some really great company in here that Kamar Wheaton is keeping. And if Oklahoma can put him in the boat, feel like it's going to be a wrap when it comes to who wins the Big 12 the Big 12 Conference recruiting championship. And then Oklahoma can really start to make a late charge, especially if this Tristan Lay stuff turns out to be like on the level. Like, that's 2 5-stars that you get to add to a third 5-star and a Billy Bowman who's on the verge of being a 5-star. Like, that class has the opportunity to be really outstanding and great. Just give it a second. BMOT20 says, you think OSU's defense going to get better soon? OSU's defense is good. Oh, you talk about Ohio State. My bad. There are 2 OSUs in my house, not 3, because Oregon State doesn't really get a whole hell of a lot of run here. Though, shout out Jonathan Smith. Shout out Jaquiz Rogers. Shout out Brandon Cooks. Anyway, I think Ohio State's defense gets better if they shore up their secondary, and they have an opportunity to prove that against Indiana at 11 a.m. on Big Fox when Michael Penix Jr. and Stevie Scott and Ty Freifogel and Whop Philyor travel to Ohio Stadium. What I think is interesting about that game is they're not going to allow any fans whatsoever to attend. It was the Big Ten's policy to let family, close friends attend the game. So you're talking like maybe 100 people, right? Maybe a little bit more than that. Now they're saying because of the rise in cases, the spikes around Columbus, nobody that is not directly affiliated with the game itself gets to go to that game, right? So you don't even get your close friends and family. Like, I was texting with Justin Fields' father for this feature that I wrote for Fox, and he was traveling up to Columbus for their opener against Nebraska, and like, he doesn't get to do that now, right, according to this policy, which absolutely sucks, because I feel for all the parents that don't get to travel to these games, especially at this really dark time in our history. But also, you need to put on tape and in front of a national television audience that you are still Ohio State. Not to say that you're not, but think about this. You're still recruiting JT Tuimoloau and Emeka Egbuka, right? Those are 2 dudes you're still coming after. You need to be able to show that you are going to dunk on a number 9 Indiana team. You need to put that on tape. You need to get back to the playoff. You need the playoff to be played. You need to win a national championship to shore that up, right? Ohio State is recruiting at a ridiculous level right now and has been since about March. Basically, since they got Kerry Combs back in the boat, along with guys like Al Washington and Tony Alford, they just out here killing it. But I think Brian Hartline, remiss if I didn't say him, Larry Johnson Sr. I can name the entire staff. You know how that goes. But I think that because you can't get the kids on campus and because the dead period is extended through April, you only have national television to use as a enormous recruiting tool. Like, you can do all the Zoom conferences that you want to do. You can do all the virtual tours you want to do. You need to be able to show on the field that y'all are dominant and that the kids want to be a part of that. You also need to show in the NFL draft, which Ohio State has done here in the last couple of years, right? Especially when we're talking about defensive line, cornerbacks, and really offensive line. But I think that their secondary getting better, their secondary picking people off is also going to show an Emeka Egbuka that, yes, I'm going to get challenged by dudes like Sevyn Banks, dudes like Josh Proctor, dudes like Shaun Wade. And a way that they have been taken apart here in recent games, it don't make me feel good, right? The same thing goes with that front seven against Nebraska. I get that Nebraska's going to be a running football team in 2020, such as it is, but 200 yards to Nebraska ain't what you sign up for, especially with a Larry Johnson defensive line and that linebacker group of Tuff Borland, Pete Werner, and Baron Browning. I expected that front seven to be one of the best in the country. Now, do I think that JT Tuimoloau is going to be put off by what they have done? No. If anything, I'm more inclined to think of Tuimoloau at Ohio State than Egbuka, though I'm throwing Egbuka in there, because Tuimoloau still wants to play basketball. And Ohio State, I believe, is a better basketball school than Washington, for instance, right? Or even Alabama, for that matter. So I think there's stuff for them to prove there. Let's see. What else are we getting here? Oklahoma's offense is nothing compared to Ohio State's. Okay. Sure, dude. Whatever. If BYU wants to play in the college football playoff, join a real conference. BYU ain't Notre Dame. Notre Dame ain't Notre Dame, but they joined a real conference. Give them that. And, BYU has joined the Mountain West, play a Mountain West schedule. I'll give them that too. Okay. I'm trying to think to one more question before I want to pit it to a little bit of a conversation about the Queen's Gambit and chess, because I don't think y'all know how much I love playing chess. And at one point or another, I was good. Somebody tell Gotham Chess. Who will be Ohio State's new quarterback after Fields? C.J. Stroud, Jack Miller feel like they're going to be in a two-horse race for that. I don't see a Kyle McCord competing for that job in 2021, not as a true freshman. But what we did see is Jack Miller get on the field in the opening game against Nebraska to go punch one in. I thought that was interesting because leading up to that game, one of the real deep in the weeds subplots for people that follow Ohio State closely is who's the backup quarterback. Was it C.J. Stroud? Was it Gunnar Hoke? Or was it Jack Miller? And I think we got an answer to that in the Nebraska game, because I thought it was going to be C.J. Stroud based on how he has come along and how similar his game is to Justin Fields. Coming out of Rancho Cucamonga, he goes from being ranked like 838 in like March 2019 to being a top 40 player and one of the best quarterbacks and Elite 11 MVP in the same year. Just a remarkable rise for him. And Jack Miller's last season in Arizona wasn't great, but I was also told over and over again, offensive line down there was trash, RJ. He's running for his life like every other play and still making plays. If you have the awareness to be able to make plays while running for your life, you're probably going to be pretty good against a stupid good pass rush and a stupid good secondary like Ohio State's, because you already had to think in that manner before. And then we got to see him go punch it in against Nebraska, in which Ryan Day is like apologizing for running it up because the true freshman got a touchdown, which is really cool for him. And Scott Frost was asked about him running it up. Scott Frost says, hey, if we don't like to score, we need to play better. Like, he wasn't really getting that upset about it. I'm with him on that. You don't want to get styled on. Don't get styled on, right? Stop somebody. You have a defense out there. You're not letting them do it. They're doing it to you. So I think right now I would give Jack Miller the lead when we're talking about who's going to be the starting quarterback. Now, there's a lot of football left to be played. Hopefully we get a spring football season, but even that doesn't look likely right now based on how the virus has been impacting us since Halloween, right? Going into the summer, we could see who stays around and who gets their reps in, and then preseason camp will tell us everything we need to know. But I know this. If C.J. Stroud is your backup quarterback, you're really good. Will C.J. Stroud stay put, though? That's the other question. Because now fans think that coaches are making decisions based on trying to keep their rosters full at a depth chart. And I'm saying if that's the case, just take a look at Georgia. Kirby Smart didn't seem to care that Justin Fields was going to transfer or that Jacob Eason was going to transfer, right? That doesn't seem to matter for him. And the other thing that I put in there is like the quarterbacks don't really change up that often. And by that, I mean like they stay within the Power 5 structure. Dwan Matthews was going to Ohio State until Justin Fields decided he was going to transfer to Ohio State. Where's Dwan Matthews end up? Georgia, right? Think about that for a second. Where did Kelly Bryant end up? It wasn't BYU. It wasn't North Texas. It wasn't Illinois. It was Missouri, right? Like, there's some rhyme and reason here. I don't think just because a dude is not playing that you're going to work as if that dude is going to transfer. Because if that's what you're doing, then you're not going to be able to recruit at all. If C.J. Stroud goes into the portal or Jack Miller goes into the portal, that is what it is. And I think that your job as a head coach is to be clear about why the guy who is playing and what the guy behind him has to do to play. Sometimes that's as simple as I like one guy better than another guy and being clear about that and let that quarterback go on his way. Like Chase Bryce did this and what Dabo Swinney believed was the right way, which is to wait till the season was over. Say, Coach, Trevor's going to be your guy. You got DJ Uiagalelei coming in. I'm not going to be able to play. Can we get me a grad transfer somewhere? It's like, you know what? You're right. Let me get Dave Cutcliffe on the line, and let's see if we can't get you there. And Chase Bryce ends up being the starting quarterback at Duke. That's within conference. Now, Duke ain't any threat to Clemson, but if Chase Bryce was a threat at Clemson, he'd be playing at Clemson. That was what I think was made clear about how Clemson does business. The best player is going to play. And I think that's what you're going to see at Ohio State. If it's Jack Miller, who it seems to be right now, then it's going to be Jack Miller. If it's not Jack Miller, it'd be C.J. Stroud. Either way, Ryan Day is coming out roses. Kyle McCord's coming in. And now he's got a real shot at Quinn Ewers because that dude decommitted from Texas, a month ago? So, like, I wouldn't worry about it. But right now, I'd say Jack Miller. We'll see if that's subject to change. Ooh. See if we got anything else in here. Phil Thompson says, mask are BS. Yeah, well, Phil Thompson, you can find another channel. There you go. I'm not playing with that. I'm not playing with the mask or BS. Hey, my mama bumping in there. My mama with the $20 super chat saying, you are amazing. I appreciate that. Thank you, mama. She tried to call me during the live stream. That's probably why she's over here just blowing up my phone now. Let me see. Oh, snap. That's cool. Hell yeah, Ben. Like I'm all right, I'm gonna let him know that. All right. I want to pivot hard to story time. So for those of y'all that like LSU and like knowing recruiting stories, I think Flip the Script is worth your time, even as LSU is not having the best year. The Rock also wrote the foreword for this book. It's short. You can read it in an afternoon. And it's a lot of fun. Matter of fact, Doc just dropped in here. Is everyone bowl eligible regardless of win total this year? I'd watch Vanderbilt versus Kansas in a bowl just to see who's worse. I'm with you, right? And everybody is eligible. So everybody that wants to play in a bowl game gets to play in a bowl game. So Kansas versus Vanderbilt definitely could be on the menu. I'll be interested to see who wins that game too. Vanderbilt, don't you dare beat Kansas. Cause like, what are we gonna do with Kansas if y'all beat Kansas? Y'all got baseball. Well, I guess Kansas got basketball. But like, that would be such a bad look for the Big 12 if Kansas got ran by Vanderbilt, by the Commodores, giving them their only win of the season. Oh man, I don't know that Big 12 fans would live that one down, like ever. I wouldn't let anybody live that one down. All right. So the Joe Burrow story and the recruitment of Joe Burrow is wild fascinating to me because it was clear that Joe Burrow changed LSU football forever, but it was made super clear to me when Ed Orgeron put it down in black and white. So follow along here if you have the book. If not, I'm just going to tell you about it. This is 151 on Flip the Script. The first time I ever heard of Joe Burrow was from my son, Cody. Ohio State had played its spring game the week before we played ours in 2018. Burrow threw a 42-yard touchdown pass on the final play of the Buckeyes scrimmage. Cody watched it on TV and had been following Joe on social media. Cody called me, said, "Dad, this Joe Burrow is going to transfer from Ohio State. You got to get him." I went to Bill Bush, our safeties coach, who had spent a season at Ohio State in 2015 as quality control assistant. Joe's first season with the Buckeyes, said, "What do you think about us trying to get Joe Burrow here as a grad transfer? If we get Burrow, we're going to the college football playoff." That's what Bill Bush said. I said, "Let's get him then." That's what Ed Orgeron said. Joe got his release a few weeks later. Bill handled the transfer to LSU on our end because he knew the family. A lot of people knew Joe's dad, Jimmy Burrow, who was a defense coordinator at Ohio. And I figured there'd be a lot of competition to get Joe. His dad knew a lot of people I knew, even if I didn't realize that at the time. Jimmy had been in the Midwest for a long time, but we found out that he was actually from Mississippi. But then he went to Nebraska to play for the Cornhuskers. When Joe was coming out of high school in Ohio, he was a great basketball player and a very talented quarterback. He threw for a lot of yards and ran for a lot too. He was first team All-State point guard in basketball. His dad's alma mater was Nebraska, where Joe's older brothers, Dan and Jamie, played. They didn't recruit him, though, which I thought was stupid. He'd gone to Ohio State. He redshirted his first year, and then spent 2 seasons as the backup, Buckeyes quarterback J.T. Barrett. And Joe was a terrific student, made academic All-Big Ten, graduated from Ohio State in 3 years with a business degree. When the starting quarterback job came open, Urban Meyer went with Dwayne Haskins. Y'all know how that goes, right? So they find out, ultimately, it was going to be Joe's decision where he went next, and that parents weren't really going to figure in. Nebraska wasn't interested, which, again, stupid. How are you not interested in Nebraska? How does that not happen? Stupid. All right. Cincinnati was really interested in him. They had an in because Luke Fickell, the head coach, was, former assistant for the Buckeyes, defense coordinator. They had 2 other offensive coaches, Joker Phillips. Man, Joker Phillips, hadn't heard that name in a long time. Kentucky, last time I heard that name. And Mike Hertline, who he was close to at the time. They spent time together at Ohio State. Cincinnati was close to where he lived, obviously. Man is playing NFL football in the city of Cincinnati right now, coming out of Athens. And his girlfriend, found out that, Cincinnati was in, and she was from Cincinnati. So Ed Orgeron is all kinds of nervous because he thinks that Cincinnati is going to win one Joe Burrow. So when he heard that Cincinnati had promised that Joe he'd get the starting job, he started to freak out. The day that Joe walked onto their campus, he was going to be their starter. At LSU, we already had a 3-quarterback battle for the starting job, with 2 of the guys having come from top 10 recruits, Miles Brennan and Lowell Narcisse. Okay. And the third guy was Justin McMillan. Justin McMillan ends up transferring to Tulane. Okay. So Justin McMillan also ends up transferring to Tulane after first just not showing up to practice one day after it felt like Joe Burrow was going to be the dude, right? Then decided he wanted to come back to LSU, and Ed Orgeron was like, "Nah, it's cool. I can't let you come back." Plus, Ed wanted Joe Burrow to be the guy, and Justin McMillan was the locker room guy. So that made it easier for Ed Orgeron to lock Justin McMillan out after Justin McMillan decided not to show up to practice one day. And Ed was able to tell the team, Justin McMillan quit on y'all, making it easier for Joe's transition. But I'm going to jump ahead a little bit here because I thought that it was really interesting what Ed Orgeron had to say about finally landing Joe. So they take him to dinner, and the story that many people have heard, if you don't know it, They're taking him to a restaurant. They want to serve crawfish. They don't have crawfish. Ed Orgeron sends out for crawfish. They bring the crawfish through the back so they can eat the crawfish. All right. So Joe talks a little bit about playing at LSU, what that might be for him. And Ed Orgeron told him straight up, I can't promise you the starting quarterback job, but Joe, you're going to be my starting quarterback. I have watched you on tape. I listened to you today in that room. I have total confidence that you're going to be our starting quarterback. Look at me, Joe. I have got to win here. I am putting it all on the line. You're going to be our starting quarterback, but I can't guarantee you the starting job right off the bat. I got to be loyal to my players and give them a chance. I know the talent on this team. You will be my starting quarterback, though, if you come in and do the things you're supposed to do. And if the head coach thinks you should be the starting quarterback, guess who is going to be the starting quarterback? To which Joe Burrow says, as coolly as ever, I got you, coach. Like, that's wild to me that Ed Orgeron was pleading with Joe Burrow to come to LSU. And then it gets better because they are waiting on Joe to make a decision. He called. They didn't get an answer. Monday morning, Ed Orgeron called his older brother, Dan. And he said, I thought Dan was key to Joe. Dan was an honest guy, gung-ho. I knew I made a good connection with him that weekend. He was the guy who broke the ice that Saturday. I was pretty sure he believed that LSU was the best place for his brother. So here's the dialogue here. Hey, Dan, what's going on, Joe? Well, coach, it's his decision. Hey, Dan, F that. Only he said the four-letter word. LSU or Cincinnati. Listen, Dan, I want you to reach down there and check your package. If you got two, you need to give him a call and tell him LSU is the best place for him. Are you going to let him go to Cincinnati instead of LSU, Dan? Well, it's going to be up to Joe. Danny, if you love your brother and want what's best for him, and I know you do, you got to call him and be firm with him. Yes, sir. I know you love your brother, and you know the best decision for him is to go to LSU. You got to be strong and forceful in how you say it. Yes, sir. Like, wow. That story is bonkers to me. Because, like, Ed Orgeron is recruiting like everybody says that they recruit. And I don't know that every coach takes it that far. I don't know that every coach is calling a kid repeatedly, trying to get through, and then calling his older brother, and then challenging his older brother's manhood while telling him, you got to be a man and tell your brother what to do. There are parents that won't go that far. Like, I got to believe that Ed Orgeron makes that phone call to some parents, they hanging up the phone, right? This makes the Patrick Surtain story even more funny because Patrick Surtain Sr. said he wanted Patrick Surtain Jr. to go to a place where they're going to win championships. And Ed Orgeron apparently told Patrick Surtain Sr., that's what we're going to do here. And Patrick Surtain Sr. raised an eyebrow. It's like, uh-huh. So, he trying to say, look at what we did in 2019, right? Even as Pat Surtain Jr. is probably going to be the first cornerback taken off the board in 2021. Like, all of that story is bonkers to me. All of that story is wild to me. And I love it so much because it's authentically Ed Orgeron. It's all the things that people love and all the things that people hate about Ed Orgeron smashed together. Right there. You understand how Ed Orgeron is able to swing Reggie Bush to USC. That actually happened. Matter of fact, go check that video out on the channel. I interviewed Reggie Bush on my radio show at Big 12 Media Days in 2019. And he told a story about I wasn't going to LSU. And then Ed Orgeron convinced me to be over there. I wonder if he convinced him or, did that grab him by the lapel thing that he did to Dan to tell him what he's going to do. Like, that's wild to me. Goodness me. All right. Let me see. What else we got in here? Do I have time to talk a little bit about the King's Gambit? Let's see. Shout out Doc for telling everybody, hey, look, thanks for showing up, everyone. Help this channel keep growing by smashing the like button. and subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. Which reminds me, I do have something I want to get across to you. All right. Let me go at this another way. I want you guys to consider registering and donating to the Pearl House. Okay? What is the Pearl House? The Pearl House was founded in 2013 to provide hope for girls in rural Ghana, Africa, by providing physical care, emotional support, spiritual development, and life-changing academic vocational opportunities. They empower their girls to discover their unique identity and purpose in Christ. Together, we are shaping a brighter future for these girls, their communities, and their nation. The mission of the Pearl House is to protect, educate at-risk young women in underserved communities around the world. They are committed to helping our pearls of great price become amazing women that they want to be. Now, I botched that read, and I'm going to probably do it again in another segment. But I have donated to the Pearl House. One of my very good friends, Steve Bullard, and his wife, who you've heard from Steve on this channel, help run that organization. The Pearl House virtual gala is Tuesday, December 1, 2020. There's a link in the description right now where you can go check out thepearlhouse.org and see what that organization is all about. The way that I put it in my head and the way that I communicate it to other people is, who does not want to help girls get through school and black women get through school? Very close to me, very close to my heart. And I'm very, very interested in spreading that message. So visit thepearlhouse.org. Go take a look at the virtual gala. There's also a silent auction where you can bid on all types of stuff. I've never actually participated in a silent auction. It would probably be my first time to do it. Maybe I'll see you at the virtual gala. I am registered to be there. It's going to be via Zoom, so we're not going to be contacting each other, which is how I want it to be, because I'm not trying to catch any of y'all cooties. So visit, please. Brandon Garcia, RJ, Dream Oklahoma versus Texas high school football matchup. I don't know, man. Like, if we're taking it like era, like right now, give me Owasso versus Duncanville. Give me Bixby versus Denton Ryan. How about that? Right? Let's do that. I think that would be a lot of fun. I was going to do the Queen's Gambit thing, but I don't think that I need it today, so I'm probably going to save it. I really want to. I've been putting together a bunch of notes about the Queen's Gambit, both the TV show and the novel, because I think it's really, really fun. All right. I appreciate y'all for coming through. Remember, if you like the channel, subscribe to the RJ Young Show. Like this video. Share these videos with your friends. We have over 56,000 folks that have subscribed to the channel, which is 3 times as many as the college football channel for Fox, which is wild and really inspiring. And I make videos every day, 4 times a day. Live stream on Mondays and Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time, where if you're in the chat and you have a good question, I try to take it on. That is it for me. I will see y'all in a few hours. Deuces.